Well, hello out there. Welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to focus on getting this engine finished so that it's ready to go into the boat. You notice I've got it off the old engine stand back there, and I got the flywheel and housing on. I was going to show you how to put the final stages on this side all together. Thinking I had turned the camera on, I went ahead and I was putting it all together. Went to turn the old cam off, realizing, oops, I forgot to start recording. So rather than tearing everything apart, I'm just going to explain what I did. I found the fuel line. It took me about 2 weeks searching for it. I finally found it. Everything got in such a mess. It's been a nightmare finding things. And that was the reason I didn't film anything with the flywheel and the bolts for the housing to bolt it to the block. I had all the bolts, no problem for the flywheel itself. But finding the old bolts here, I could only find 2 bolts. So as I found them, I just put one in at a time until I eventually got all bolts in. Even as you can see, there's some shiny ones, so I had to break down and buy some. I still have yet to finish the exhaust section of the manifold to the exhaust port, which goes out through the leg eventually. That's where it exhausts from. I got part of it on the bench. I'll show you later how to make a gasket, because we need to make a gasket for here. I got my distributor in place, but somehow to me it doesn't feel correct. So in my rechecking it, I'm going to show you a trick on how to find your number 1 position for setting that distributor into its final place. So that's going to be our beginning point. I have my old Genie. Oh, when you wired up, that was another thing. On the coil, I went to explain the negative wire goes to your points in your distributor. This wire will go on the negative side of the coil. I made me just a jump wire here just for getting this thing to run. That goes on the positive wire, and I just temporarily put it onto our start winding, so the minute I hook the old Genie up here onto our battery terminal, we have power at the coil. How I know if it's working? I have an old spark plug tester. When I pull this apart, I'll show you how. We're going to make it, as Derek calls, a NASCAR gas fuel system. So my hose is ready here for an old gas tank. It's getting late in the day, so rather than start on this, I'm going to do this tomorrow. But before I shut this down, I'm going to pull this distributor out, this number 1 spark plug out. So when I come to the process of showing how to determine it, you go about doing it. Well, the first step is to take your old distributor cap off, see where you're presently at. According to I took a picture of this engine before I even started tearing it apart. It really doesn't matter in this particular case where your number 1 is sitting, so long as you remember your firing order of most all 4 cylinders is 1, 3, 4, 2. So with that, we can just lift this off, and we see that we're at number 1, which is our loose one here, is sitting there. So it tells us that our number one is there. Now this is the question. Because there's no vacuum advance on this distributor, Matt, I'm sure you're asking yourself, well, which way is the rotor rotating? Well, if you don't know the answer, here is a case, and that's why I'm pointing this out, because here is a case where, yeah, we don't know because we got no vacuum advance on it. So which way does that rotor going? There's only one way to find out. That's to take your cap off, hit your starter button, and pay attention as which way that's rotating when the engine is cranking. And that's the only way you're going to be able to figure out as to which way this is rotating. Whether it's rotating this way or whether it's rotating that way. We have to determine that. So let's get our little horseshoe arm off. As I said, when I looked at the picture that I took ahead of time, it tells me that our two odd cylinder numbers are to the outside and our two even cylinder numbers are on the inside. So I'm going to set this up to the way it shows in the picture before I tore this all apart. Okay, horseshoe is off, and here's why I don't like this present position. I made a mark on my distributor to the number one for the cap. And see, that tells me there, but you see what the problem is, that this wire here is on the front side. I'd like to see that wire on this side. So that's one of the big reasons we're going to change this. When we see we'll pulled it on, our cap rotor turned this way. So there's our mark that I pre-made for our number one. And you take the cap, where's that number one wire? Jammed. This is our number one wire. Put the cap onto the there. It only loops fit one way because you're notching the cap right there. Will tell you the position which matches this here. So as you can see, our number one is not right there, but in between before. Because when we look at this closely, there's our notch for this little groove here. There's our number one. So again, put this cap so that drops into place like that. We know this is our number one. Get our old paint pen. We're going to draw a marking here on the case. We're going to draw a line like this. I don't know if you can see that, but there's my line telling me this is where number one should be. So I'd like to see my number one approximately there, which is our closest distance for that wire there. So I just pre-dropped it in here. It's not all the way in because how is another thing I thought I had showed, but forgetting to turn the old video camera on. How I primed the engine before crank is important to prime the oil system. How I did that, I just dropped the old screwdriver in here and we started spinning it like this until I saw oil flowing along the valve top and feeling if we have oil pressure. Fantastic. It was very good oil pressure. It has all been primed, ready to go. I can't go much farther now until my old Genie charge I found out was on its needed a charge because this engine is on the tight side and I was bumping it over earlier on. So at this point we'll go and call it a night and do this off, finish this in the morning. I'll show you at the same time how to make a gasket. Can't recall if I said it or not, but I'll say it again. How to make a gasket for over there for our exhaust section. This, by the way, will be my very last rebuild engine job. I may just sell the engine stand. I haven't decided yet. I just bought it so that I could do this job. Whether I'm going to keep it or not, I haven't decided yet. Well, it's the next day. Well, let's get this thing finished. Where did I leave off? Right. About to show, gotta get the genie out. We gotta first of all get this to our compression stroke for our number 1 cylinder. So we're gonna bump the engine till you feel compression. Okay, there's our compression stroke. There, so now you have an idea of where your number 1 position goes. As you can see, I pre-marked my distributor. I pulled all the spark plug wires off here so we can get the correct order after for firing order. But you see my number 1 is pretty well lined up. So with that, we're going to go ahead and pop the distributor in place. We know we want it to the front. Now, if you saw those sparks, that's because our coil is in. Or just shut our pack off for a second while we get this in place. Remember, you got half of a turn here. Line this up to the edge of the filter, and we see it went that way. Okay. So now we have to come the other side with our rotor. We'll approximate to the screw door because your threads will turn it as we drop it. And you can see we're lined up perfectly right there for number 1. So now we'll take on, we'll put our little horseshoe on. Horseshoe clip. This fuel pump doesn't give you much room to get at it. If this would have been on the bottom side, you'd have lots of room. Okay, I think if I remember. We don't want this too tight, so we just snug it. Just a little bit. We can do the final movement in setting our timing. If I can figure out how to get the wrench in here. Almost tempted to pull this off. But, well, give me a break. Yeah, wouldn't be surprised. Okay, that's about as tight as we want it. So, line, there's our mark, there's our rotor. Okay, now we're going to get our before we do that, turn the power back on here. We want to know which way this rotor's going, as mentioned before. Know it back in advance so you don't know your direction. So we're going to find which direction this is rotating. Now when we crank it, and we see it's rotating this way. So now we put our cap on. Okay, so it's rotating this way. The next one will be your firing order. Remember, is 1342. So number 3 next. There we have our 2 odds on the outside. Number 4 is next, and the last one, number 2. Okay, we're going to pop the spark plug back in, or as Derek would say, sparkulator. We'll put the sparkulator back in. Okay, does our ignition work? That's the next question. So, to find out if we're getting spark, I'll get my old tester out here. Plug this in, the old tester here. This should light up if we're getting spark. So, let's check that. And if you've seen the light flash there, saying we got a spark. So the last thing left now, we'll get some more fuel to it. And if all goes well, this thing should fire up. Oh, before we can fire it up, I've got to finish that exhaust section. Okay, I promised I'd show you how to make a gasket. I'm going to have to switch cameras here. So. Okay, thin piece of cardboard. This is what we're going to make there. So we'll take our cardboard, lay it out, just roughed it out. Now I don't have a ball peen hammer, but ball peen hammer works best, so I'll use the old body hammer. But we're going to get the layout, and we'll just start by tapping along the edge. To show you, there's a basic shape. So at this point, now that we have that, start basically from the inside out. So now we switch our hammer over and find out, and we just keep doing what we're doing here. You have to be careful here because this portion is a thin one. So oh, that's interesting. I'll show that trick later on. Okay, now you very carefully lift this out. This is where you marked it for where the bolts would go. And there we have one gasket. Now you just can do a little of the cleanup. Pull your bolt holes out. One completed gasket. Now we're going to get this in. We're going to spray that down with the aluminum paint. Oops. Use it in the process. And there we have one new gasket. Okay, put my gasket on already, so let's get the first half of the exhaust manifold on. Start a couple of bolts here, doesn't lift off. Now we're going to take our second, and this is the fun piece. We got to twist this rubber onto here and get the whole thing together. It might be easier if I did it the other way. We'll see shortly. Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, not a problem with a big outfit like this. Gives me some leeway. Get these two to line up is the art. But artwork goes here. We'll start with this bolt here first. Okay. There's a good reason right here is why you start your bolts, all of your bolts, before you tighten them. Okay, where's that next hole? Right there. Okay, try this one. Got to turn this just a hair by the feel of it that way. That's the difference, about a whole millimeter. Okay, feels like we got them going. Going to get the 1/2-inch wrench. Only partially tighten them. Okay, that one's going in. Next one. Okay, all those have started. Let's bolt it down to the old manifold here. This one we can go ahead and snug it right down. No way you can use a socket and I keep saying air ratchet because so many years I worked with air ratchets. Forget that it's now the battery operated ratchet. So just by instinct I tend to call it air ratchet. And yet it's a battery. But any which way case, you only get about 3 bolts even if you were to use it, and that's these 3 here. The rest is all wrench work. So you might as well use the wrench all right throughout instead of having to dig 101 tools out. Sure wished I knew how to do fast forwarding in the editing, but I don't, so I end up, I'll just cut 90% out. I think it depends which editing program one is using, because there's a few I've seen that I'd like to do the same, but the question is how. I couldn't find the original lift hook for here, so I made my own right there for when I lifted the engine off the old stand. I'm hoping when I come to put this in the boat that I can find the original one. Okay, now this two hose clamps go. I'm still looking for another one of these, which is somewhere behind it, hiding on me. We won't worry about it now, we'll just worry about the one, 'cause that ain't going anywhere. And there we have that. Just pop the old water hose on here so it doesn't get lost. And I used to have a pair of water pump pliers for these clamps. I don't anymore, but I've kind of learned the trick with channel locks. Okay, so we'll get our NASCAR approved for our fuel. Okay, I'm going to loosen this off for right now. We want to see if we're getting the old fuel pump works. Okay, I don't see any fuel yet. Open it right up. Should be fuel there by now. Been sitting so long that who knows what shape the diaphragms in the fuel pump are like. This is the reason I'm checking it, to make sure it's still pumping fuel. Looks dry yet. Oh, Ginny's run out of juice. I guess we're on hold till I get another discharged, or else pull a battery out. Do I have a available battery? I don't think I do. It's a little warm from that cranking. That's what I think I'll do. Is we'll get the old booster cables. I do have a battery. My radios are running off of it, and it's fully charged because I got a charger that I keep on. So let's get the old jumper cables out. I think we have an issue with the fuel pump. Is that too long? Never take something apart and leave it sit for years. You run into all kinds of issues. That being said, I don't know if I'll make another video with me getting this running. If you want to see me get this started, put it down in the comments and I'll see what happens and go from there. Other than that, I'm going to call this complete, the final episode on this OMC engine. GM, built by GM. So like I said, if you want to see me get it running, let me know. Till then, do subscribe please. I'm going to catch you on the next one. I do have some other unfinished ones that I want to finish to get. Winter's around the corner, and I don't know if I'll be doing anything in the winter time. Thanks for watching.